I'm Dick Dominic. For the past 3 years, gunning our tidal marshes on the East Coast with my companions or alone, I've often carried along a movie camera and tape recorder. And so, in time, I recorded the various experiences with the American Brandt, that comparatively little-known small goose of the coastal waters. And finally, I completed the film you will be seeing shortly. Atlantic Coast Brandt winter on tidal waters from Massachusetts to North Carolina. Their breeding grounds are in the far north on the tundra wastes at the edge of the Arctic Ocean. In Baffinland, where they barely touch feathers with their cousins, the black Brandt of the Pacific. It's the same bird, the West Coast Brandt, just a little darker in color. And they come down to winter from Vancouver down through Southern California. Wild Ducks Unlimited has no projects in this vast Arctic breeding area. It has concentrated its work in building dams and creating other water control and conservation measures to restore the productivity of the primary breeding grounds of our continent's waterfowl, here in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Ducks and geese from these prairie provinces are taken on all 4 flyways throughout the United States. And your support of Ducks Unlimited has made this possible. When we hunt Brandt, we like to go out in a group, the 4 or 5 of us who shoot together when we are able, as perhaps on weekends. In this way, we can pool our resources to spread a large rig and exchange good-natured banter. Often, however, 1 or 2 of us will split off and stool out at some other strategic point in the bay. In this way, we can help each other to keep the birds moving. Or, of course, many is the time we go out alone, or in 2s or 3s, using only our small ducking boats. And so you'll see these varied circumstances included in the picture. You'll also see my lab helper in the film. Come here, help. Come on, helper. Good girl. Along with other retrievers. A good retriever will save a lot of birds during the season, and to keep our dogs in shape, we like to train them throughout the year as we have the opportunity, increasing the training as the season approaches. Here's Bill Gunderson, game protector of the New York Conservation Department. Bill is particularly fond of Labrador retrievers. Maybe it's because Labradors and Bill work toward the same end, the conservation of wildfowl. Also, as Bill will tell you, a lab makes a wonderful companion, both in the marsh and as a member of the family. The warden and I now are giving our Labradors, Palm and Helper, a bit of intensified work on the cold winter ice on a pond near home. It's during the gunning season, and we're using a couple of Brandt we've already killed. It's hard work and helps keep our dogs eager and in good condition. For as you will see later, the waters of the bay can be rough and cold. It's people like Warden Gunderson and the state and federal game departments, the local sportsmen's clubs throughout the nation, and the retriever clubs that help preserve our precious heritage of wildfowl. Ducks Unlimited has done a magnificent job in restoring the breeding grounds in the Canadian prairies. But civilization is continually encroaching. Marshlands like this are being drained and filled. There's pollution of our water by industry and by oil from seagoing vessels. This all takes its toll, as do birds lost by those who don't use dogs. It takes constant work by all who are interested in the preservation of our wildfowl to keep our flyways filled. And now for our film. I hope that you will enjoy seeing this picture as much as we enjoyed making it. Brandt weather. We depend less on the time of day than on the weather and the tide. Today is ideal. Freezing cold with a stiff nor'wester and early ebb tide, giving us time to get to our shooting grounds and rig out before the feeding flats are exposed. We join up together when we can. At such times, we like to use a big skiff as a stool boat, thus reducing the load in our gunning skiffs in the heavy waters of the bay. Reliable life jackets are a rule in my boat. Harold's Penny, a wise old golden retriever, smells birds in the air. The Brandt will fly in great wheeling circles, dipping and rising, waiting for the ebbing tide to feed. Or when they're traveling, they fly in uneven, wavering schemes, unlike the V's of Canada geese. Notice how one bird, diving from the flock, brings the whole bunch down with him. It looks as though it will be a good day. The tide is running swiftly past the ice-cap buoy. More than once, we have become coated with ice as our small gunning boats encountered the freezing whitecaps, stirred up by the wind against the tide. Harold untangles some decoy lines jawed loose by the pounding of the rough water. Already, the tide has dropped far enough to expose the first of the mud flats where the Brandt feed. We must waste no time. The Brandt generally prefer larger bodies of open water, so we must always use extreme caution with these small boats in this sort of weather. And here's a strange sight, a seagull chasing a Brandt. What in the world that seagull had against that Brandt, I will never know. Now we begin to round the bend, and soon we'll be in quieter water, ready to set out the stool. We used mainly Brandt decoys, with a couple of Canada geese at the head, and canvasback scattered toward the tail to add to the white stool. Then we generally put a few black mallards in a cove at the head of the rig, for occasionally other waterfowl visit, though the puddle ducks generally prefer the more secluded intimacy of the marsh creeks. The big stool boat is hidden around the bend out of sight, and the gunning skiffs are pulled up into the grass, and we are ready. Sometimes we use the skiffs as a blind, or we may just stay hidden in the reeds, where you must remain very quiet. Look out. Wait till they're in range. A miss. We use both Labradors and Golden Retrievers, and there is not really too much to choose between them. But there goes a cripple far out, escaping swiftly on the tide. Get back, helper! Over! Go on, helper! Back! Good dog! The current is swift. The water is cold. Well done. Brandt are only slightly larger than a mallard, but that long wingspan can easily fool you into shooting out of range. A broadbill. He caught everybody asleep at the switch until the last moment. What? 3 dogs for 1 broadbill? When a big flock comes straight into the stool, always pick your bird. Never shoot into the flock, for there's a surprising amount of open sky between the birds, and you stand a good chance of wing-tipped cripples. The end of a perfect day. A good limit, and Harold and Jack are a couple of happy gunners. Another day, another point in the bay where we expect the Brandt will be coming in to feed. But more than Brandt come by. Mac points out a tremendous flight of broadbill rafting out beyond our rig. Circling, pitching, corkscrewing down out of the sky from every direction. But they didn't want to come into our Brandt rig. Well, what is this raft just beyond the stool? It's Brandt. Stay down and keep your eyes peeled. Don't shoot out of range. They look bigger than they are. Careful now. Down. Dogs, keep down. Mac, Tony. Hold it. Hold it. All right. After the limit is down and brought to hand, there is still a satisfying experience in store for the gunner. Just watching the birds wheeling into the rig. They begin to arrive with us in numbers in late October or November. Gunning is at its height in January, and the birds remain through March. Many stay as late as May. A few young birds remain through the summer. Several years ago, Brandt was scarce on the East Coast, but the last few winters they have arrived in increasing numbers. Some have attributed this to the return of the eelgrass, but this is doubtful. For we have found that their diet consists mainly of the big broad-leafed cabbage seaweed and the small black mud snails. We are greatly beholden to Ducks Unlimited for the waterfowl that still populate our skies. Ducks Unlimited needs the continued support of the sportsmen and bird lovers throughout our nation so that we may continue to enjoy the thrill of watching the wavering flocks cross our marshes and bays.